I am standing in my living room looking at the hardwood floors. I refinished myself the small backyard through the window where that old dogwood tree blooms every spring. This house, this three-bedroom ranch in the suburbs of Cleveland is mine. I paid off the mortgage last month after 12 years of grinding, saving, sacrificing. 12 years of never missing a payment. It is the first thing I have ever truly owned, the first place that is completely mine. I never thought the person who would try to take it from me would be my own mother. But 3 months after I made that final payment, I was standing in a courtroom listening to her lawyer tell a judge why she deserved half of everything I had worked for. Before I tell you how my own mother almost stole everything I worked for, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with family betrayal, someone you trusted turning on you when you least expected it, hit that like button. So I know I am not alone in this. Make sure to subscribe, because this story gets wild, and you will not believe how it ends. You will not believe what I had hidden up my sleeve. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, back to when I still believed my mother wanted what was best for me. My name is Leonard. I grew up in a single-parent home after my dad walked out when I was 5 years old. I barely remember him. What I do remember is my mother, Patricia, working 2 shifts to keep food on the table for me and my younger sister, Diane. She cleaned office buildings in the early mornings before the sun came up, then worked retail at a department store until closing. I remember nights when she would come home exhausted, her feet swollen, but she would still sit down and check my homework. She used to say, "Education is your way out, Leo." She called me Leo always. Leo, never Leonard, except when she was angry. I believed her. I worked hard in school, earned a scholarship to a state university, and graduated with a degree in business administration. Nothing fancy, but it was something. It was more than anyone in my family had ever done. My first job was as a sales representative for an industrial supply company. The pay was not great, but it was steady. I lived in a cramped apartment for 7 years, saving every penny I could, eating ramen more nights than I care to admit, because I had a goal. I wanted to own a house. I wanted something that was mine, something nobody could take away. In 2011, I found it. A small house in a quiet suburb outside Cleveland. It needed work. The paint was peeling, the carpet was stained, and the kitchen faucet leaked like a broken promise. But it had 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and that dogwood tree. When I saw that tree, something in my chest tightened. It reminded me of the one in the yard of the apartment complex where we lived when I was a kid, where Diane and I used to play. I put down 20% from my savings. I signed a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, my hand shaking as I wrote my name on the papers. When I got the keys, I sat in my car in the driveway and cried. I called my mother immediately. "Mom, I bought a house," I said. She screamed with joy. "Baby, I am so proud of you. I am so proud." I invited her over the next weekend. She walked through every room, touching the walls, looking out the windows. I was so happy to share this with her. I wanted her to see what her sacrifices had built, that her son had made something of himself. She hugged me in the kitchen and said, "You did good, Leo. You did real good." The first 6 months were bliss. I spent every weekend fixing things. I painted the walls a warm beige. I replaced that leaky faucet. I tore up the old carpet and spent 3 weeks refinishing the hardwood underneath until it gleamed. I was building something. I was building a life. Then my mother started asking strange questions. She came over one Saturday, walked around the house like she was inspecting it, and asked, "So what is this place worth now? With all the work you have done, I do not know, Mom. Maybe 150,000, 160. Why?" She nodded slowly, her eyes moving over everything like she was calculating. Then she asked, "So if something happened to you, who gets the house?" The question felt wrong. I laughed it off. "I have not made a will yet." "Why are you asking?" She shrugged. "Just curious, just thinking about the future." But her face was unreadable, and something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. 2 weeks later, she called me. "Leonard," she said. "Not Leo. I have been thinking. Would you consider putting my name on the house? You know, as a co-owner. For security purposes in case anything happens to you. I was stunned. Mom, this is my house. I worked hard for this. Her voice went cold. I am just trying to protect our family's interests. Leonard, our family's interests. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. I told her I would think about it, but I did not. I pushed it out of my mind. I told myself she was just being overprotective, just worried about me. But the seed of doubt was planted. A year passed. My mother started calling more often, visiting more often, and every time she did, the conversations turned to money or the house. One afternoon, she called saying she was in trouble. She needed $3,000. I am behind on rent, Leo. I do not know what to do. Please. I gave her the money. I wired it that same day because she was my mother, and you help your mother when she is in trouble. She promised to pay me back in 3 months. 3 months came and went. I finally brought it up gently over the phone. She exploded. After everything I sacrificed for you, you are worried about money. You are going to nickel and dime your own mother. I backed down immediately. I am sorry, Mom. Forget it. Do not worry about it. But the knot in my stomach tightened. 2 months later, she asked for a spare key to my house. Just in case of emergency, Leo. What if something happens and I need to get in? I should have said no. I should have trusted my gut. But I gave her the key. A week later, I came home from work and found her sitting on my couch watching my television, a bag of chips open on the coffee table. She had let herself in like she owned the place. Mom, what are you doing here? I asked. She looked at me like I was being ridiculous. I can visit my son's house, cannot I? But you did not tell me you were coming. She waved her hand dismissively. I do not need permission, Leo. The way she said it made my skin crawl. This is my house, I wanted to say. But I did not. I just stood there confused and frustrated. The next month I came home and found a stranger in my living room. A woman I had never met, someone my mother had brought over. Her name was Georgia, a friend of my mother's. My mother had not asked. She had not told me. She just brought someone into my house like it was hers to share. I pulled my mother aside. Mom, you cannot just bring people to my house without asking. You are so selfish, Leonard. I raised you better than this. I raised you to share, to be kind. But you have changed. You have become greedy. Her words stung like a slap. I felt like a child being scolded. But I was not a child. I was a 32-year-old man who owned his own home, and my mother was treating me like I owed her everything. A few weeks later, my sister Diane called me. Her voice was tight with worry. Leo, you need to be careful with Mom. What do you mean? She has been telling people that your house is really our family house. She is saying you promised to share it with the family, that you are just holding it for everyone. I know you did not say that. I know you. But she is spreading this story, and I am worried. I felt cold all over. I never said that. I never promised her anything. I know. But I think you need to talk to a lawyer, Leo. Just in case. A lawyer. That seemed extreme. But the fear in Diane's voice scared me. I called my mother and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop. We sat across from each other, the table between us feeling like a chasm. I tried to keep my voice calm. Mom, Diane told me you have been saying things about my house. I need to be clear. This is my house. I bought it with my money. You did not contribute anything to the down payment or the mortgage. I appreciate everything you did for me growing up, but that does not mean you own part of this house. She stared at me, and for the first time I saw something cold in her eyes. I raised you, Leonard. I sacrificed everything for you. I worked myself to the bone so you could have opportunities. That house should be mine too. You owe me. You owe me for all those years. I deserve half of that house, at least half. I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. This was not confusion. This was not a misunderstanding. This was calculated. This was intentional. I shook my head. I am grateful for everything you did. But that does not mean you own my house. The answer is no. She stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. You are going to regret this, Leonard." She walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was a legal summons. My hands shook as I opened it. Patricia Henderson versus Leonard Henderson. Breach of oral contract. Unjust enrichment. My mother was suing me. She claimed I had promised her co-ownership of the house. She was demanding that I either add her name to the deed or pay her 50% of the home's current value. I sat down on my kitchen floor and stared at the paper in my hands. I could not breathe. I could not think. My own mother was trying to take my house, the house I had bled for, the house I had sacrificed for. I called Diane, my voice shaking. She is suing me. Mom is actually suing me. Diane was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I am so sorry, Leo. You need a lawyer. You need one now." I found a lawyer named Marcus Holloway. He specialized in real estate and family law. I sat in his office, a small room with diplomas on the wall and stacks of files on his desk, and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "This is more common than you would think, unfortunately. Family members trying to claim property they have no legal right to. But here is the good news. If you have documentation, if you have proof that you bought this house and paid for it yourself, she does not have a leg to stand on." "What kind of proof?" I asked. "Bank statements showing you made every mortgage payment. The mortgage documents with only your name. The property deed with only your name. Any emails or text messages where she asked for ownership and you refused. Anything that shows there was no agreement. I have all of that." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. I have bank statements going back 12 years. I have the mortgage papers. I have the deed. And I have something else. "What?" After that conversation at the coffee shop, I started recording our phone calls. Ohio is a one-party consent state. It is legal. I have her on tape admitting that I never promised her anything. I have her saying I should give her the house because I owe her, but she admits I never actually made that promise. Marcus Holloway smiled for the first time since I walked into his office. "That is very good, Leonard. That is very, very good." We spent the next 3 weeks preparing. I gathered every document, every statement, every piece of evidence I had. Marcus built a defense that was airtight, but I could not sleep. I lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, thinking about standing in a courtroom across from my mother, thinking about a judge deciding whether I got to keep my home. The day of the trial came on a cool September morning. I walked into the courthouse, my stomach churning. I saw my mother sitting with her lawyer, a man named Donald Pierce. She did not look at me. The courtroom was small, no jury, just a judge. Her name was Judge Sandra Whitfield, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Donald Pierce stood up first. He painted a picture of my mother as a saint. Patricia is a devoted mother who sacrificed everything for her children. She worked 2 jobs. She gave up her own life to make sure her son could succeed. And Leonard promised her that when he bought a house, she would have a share in it. It was an oral agreement, Your Honor, but an agreement nonetheless. Patricia contributed emotionally and spiritually to this purchase. She deserves to be compensated. Then my mother took the stand. She told the story of raising me, of working those 2 jobs, of having no life of her own. She cried. I am sure some of those tears were real, but most of them were not. She said I had promised to take care of her, that I had betrayed her, that she never thought her own son would do this to her. I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, my lawyer's hand on my arm, keeping me steady. I looked at the judge, trying to read her face. Was she buying this? Did she believe my mother? Then it was Marcus Holloway's turn. He stood up slowly, calmly. Your Honor, I have documents that will clarify the situation. He laid out 12 years of bank statements on the table in front of the judge. Every single mortgage payment came from Leonard's account. Not $1 came from Patricia. He showed the original mortgage application with only my name, only my income listed. He showed the property deed with only my signature, only my name. Your Honor, there is no evidence that Patricia contributed financially to this home in any way. The judge looked at the documents, nodding slowly. Then Marcus pulled out the text messages. These are conversations between Leonard and Patricia over the past 2 years. In multiple messages, Patricia asks Leonard to add her name to the house. Leonard clearly refuses. He says, and I quote, "Mom, this is my house. I bought it myself." If there was already an agreement, why would she keep asking? Judge Whitfield looked up at my mother, her eyebrows raised. Then Marcus showed the emails. After their conversation at the coffee shop, Leonard sent his mother an email. He wrote, "Mom, I want to make this clear in writing. I never promised you ownership of my house. I appreciate everything you did for me, but this property is solely mine." Patricia never responded to that email. If she disagreed, "Your Honor, why did she not respond?" The courtroom was quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Marcus said, "Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. This is a recorded conversation between Leonard and Patricia, recorded legally under Ohio's one-party consent law." He played the recording, my voice nervous, asking, "Mom, did I ever promise to give you part of my house?" And then her voice angry, bitter. "No, you did not promise. But you should. You owe me." My voice again. "So you are admitting I never made that promise?" And her voice sharp and cold. "Fine. You never said it outright. But it is implied. After everything I did." The recording ended. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Whitfield looked at my mother, and I saw something hard in her eyes. Marcus sat down. "The plaintiff's own words prove there was no agreement, Your Honor." Judge Whitfield did not hesitate. She did not need time to think. She looked at my mother and said, "Ms. Patricia, I have reviewed all the evidence. It is clear to me that Mr. Leonard purchased this home with his own funds. There is no evidence of any agreement, oral or otherwise. In fact, your own recorded statement contradicts your claim. Furthermore, I find your testimony to be inconsistent with the facts. I hereby dismiss this case with prejudice. Ms. Patricia, you are ordered to pay Mr. Leonard's legal fees in the amount of $5,200. This court is adjourned." My mother jumped to her feet. "This is unfair. He is my son." Judge Whitfield looked at her coldly. "Being someone's mother does not entitle you to their property, ma'am." She banged her gavel, and it was over. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Marcus shook my hand. "Congratulations, Leonard. You did great." My mother left without looking at me, her lawyer hurrying beside her. I stood on the courthouse steps, the autumn sun on my face, and I felt relief. But I also felt grief. I had won, but I had lost something too. I drove home and sat in my living room, the same room where this all started. The house was still mine. The deed still had only my name. But everything felt different. I asked myself, was it worth it? And I answered myself yes, because I could not let her take what I built. I could not let guilt and manipulation win. Diane came over that evening. She hugged me tight. "I am so sorry you had to go through that, Leo." She told me that Mom had called her angry, blaming her for taking my side. "But I do not regret it," Diane said. "You did the right thing." Then she told me something I did not know. Mom tried to do the same thing to me 3 years ago. She wanted me to invest in some business idea, and when I said no, she did not talk to me for 6 months. I stared at my sister, realizing that this was a pattern. Our mother had done this before. I decided that day that I needed space. I could not have her in my life, at least not for a while. Maybe not ever. It hurt, but I had to protect myself. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Julia Freeman. We worked through the trauma of betrayal, of realizing that the person who gave you life could also try to destroy what you built. I learned about boundaries. I learned that loving someone does not mean letting them hurt you. The months passed. I threw myself into my work and earned a promotion to regional sales manager. My income increased. I felt proud of myself in a way I had not felt in years. I joined a local volunteer group and made new friends. One of my neighbors, a guy named Kyle, who was around my age, became a close friend. He had his own story about family betrayal, and we understood each other in a way that felt like healing. I learned to love myself again. Every morning I woke up in my house, and I felt grateful. I did not feel guilty anymore. I understood that protecting myself was not selfish. It was necessary. A year after the trial, I felt stronger. The wound was still there, but it had scabbed over. It did not bleed anymore. I learned that it is okay to say no, even to family, especially to family sometimes. Love does not mean sacrificing your own well-being. My mother did sacrifice for me growing up, and I will always be grateful for that. But that does not mean she owns me or my accomplishments. There is a difference between honoring someone's sacrifice and being held hostage by it. Winning that case was not just about keeping my house. It was about refusing to be manipulated by guilt. It was about standing up for the life I built with my own hands. Do I forgive my mom? I am working on it. Not for her sake, but for mine. Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But forgiveness does not mean letting her back into my life. It means releasing the bitterness so I can move forward. I still live in that house. I paid off the mortgage completely. The house is entirely mine now, free and clear. I am planning to renovate the backyard next spring, maybe build a small patio under that dogwood tree. 6 months after the trial, my mother sent me a letter. It was not an apology. She said she was disappointed in me that I had chosen money over family. I read it once, folded it up, and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday we will talk again. Maybe someday she will understand what she did. But that day is not today, and it might never come. And I have made peace with that. Sometimes the people who gave you life think they own it. But your life is yours to build, yours to protect, and yours to live. And if standing up for yourself means losing someone you love, well, maybe they never really loved the real you to begin with. I still have that dogwood tree in my backyard. Every spring it blooms. And every spring I am reminded that even after the hardest winters, beautiful things can still grow. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who tried to take advantage of you? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and keeping the peace? Drop your story in the comments. I would love to hear that I am not alone. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button. Subscribe so you do not miss more stories like this. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it is okay to set boundaries even with the people you love. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you are strong enough to protect what is yours, and you deserve to live a life free from guilt and manipulation. Take care of yourselves out there. You are worth it.